Hello, rock stars, and welcome to String and Story. My name is Holly Ann Knight, and it is my job to guide you to quilt with confidence. I am so excited to have y'all here tonight for our 3 myths about quilting with rulers masterclass. Now, I see a whole bunch of y'all in the chat already, and Jean, I think it's your first time here. Welcome. I am just thrilled to see you. Jan, Kat, Mary, Francie, Pineapple Soul 56. Dawn, Mary Jane, Deborah, Debbie, Dee Dee, and others. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Now, I would love it if you dropped in the chat for me what makes you excited to learn about the myths around quilting with rulers. Is it because you're wanting to quilt with rulers? Is it because you've tried and it's been hard? Is it because you've already jumped into Ruler Quilting Academy and you are just stoked and you're wanting to soak up all the knowledge that you can? I want to know what brings you here tonight and what makes you super duper excited. Now, before we even jump in, I'm going to go ahead and drop our first link down into the chat. I'm going to mention this again in like 2 slides, but I know it takes a second to click on stuff. I have a gift for y'all just for being here tonight, and that is the Confident Ruler Quilting Workbook. So if you are here, I am assuming that you are curious about quilting with rulers, and this is going to give you some really foundational information about why would we quilt with rulers, what is like special about quilting rulers, what can we do with them, and why do they stand out when we use them to finish our projects. Okay. Jean says, my husband, John, the quilt father, is also here. Jean and John, I'm thrilled to have both of you. Hello, Christy. Pineapple Soul says, I've done very little machine quilting and want to learn more. I just attended the AQS quilt show in Branson. That's amazing. Jan says, learning about rulers and free motion. I love it. I love it. I love it. Keep those coming, y'all. And I am going to throw our slides up. So 3 myths about quilting with rulers with me, Holly Ann Knight of String and Story. And because I know, oh, Jessie, hello up in Swanee. So good to see you. Here's the thing. In my experience as an educator, and I've been teaching quilting specifically since 2017. I've been teaching big picture since about 2006. But teaching specifically quilting over these last 6-7 years, I have observed a trend, and that is that when we're curious about something or we encounter something, but it is not something we know how to do yet, our brains love to absorb all the negative information about that thing, right? So anything we hear that makes it hard, that makes it unachievable, that makes it something that we can't do, those are the things that our brains latch on to, right? And some of y'all have been part of the Quilting Rockstars for a while. You know, I teach a lot of free motion quilting, and I see students all the time latch on to like, I don't consider myself an artist, therefore I can never free motion quilt. And that's just a fallacy that our brain is feeding us, right? And I have noticed that when it comes to learning how to quilt with rulers, we have several repeat fallacies that show up over and over again. Okay, so today we're going to tackle 3 key ones head on. I'm going to kind of debunk the myth for you and explain how we can flip that on our heads. And then at the end of our time together, I'm going to invite y'all to Ruler Quilting Academy. It is my brand new signature course. I'm stoked about it. And it's going to be your next step to really build that toolbox of how to quilt with rulers. All right. Let's see, Laura says, I've done a lot of quilting, but almost always meandering. Would love to create some cool designs. Signed up for the ruler class and can't wait. Laura, that's so exciting. Debbie says, I'm always excited about learning new skills. Kathy in Bluffton, it's so good to see you. Oh my goodness. All right, so if you're brand new or if you're not, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Holly Ann Knight, and I've been teaching quilting since 2017. And I've watched thousands of quilters just like y'all grow in their confidence to finish their quilts through my blog, workshops, and digital courses. At last count, we had over 20,000 students worldwide in over 18 countries. So I have had the amazing privilege of working with a lot of y'all. And most of my students, something like 99.9%, I've worked with like this virtually, that I get to come kind of be hopefully an encouraging, that's always my goal, right? To be an encouraging and knowledgeable and helpful voice right there in your sewing room. All right. Now, I am married to the hubster. He's here in the Navy in this photo. We have 2 boys named Jim and Ian who are trying very hard to go to sleep downstairs, even though I'm very loud when I present on these workshops. We live in Duluth, Georgia with our dog, Havana, who might make an appearance at some point. Our 2 cats who are also liable to make an appearance. And our 2 big old fish tanks, one of which is Hogwarts themed. It's the Gryffindor Quidditch team. Is this awesome? I think so. If you're not into Hogwarts and not into Harry Potter, it might not be awesome for you. But I spend my free time hanging out on our town green, hiking and riding my Peloton. Basically, an excuse to be active and outside. All right. Oh, Christy says, I bought rulers about 5 years ago, just have never sat down to practice. Christy, you are in such the perfect place. I'm so excited for you right now. Francie says, I've done some work with rulers, just love to hear anything new. Also just like to hop on with you when I can. And I love it when you're here. That makes me very happy. Kat says, I can piece my quilts easily, but I've never quilted one of my own. I would love for us to change that, Kat. That new goal, we're going to change that. All right. Now, in addition to my personal and teaching life, I also have a quilt shop. This is String and Story on Main. We opened 11 months ago today. We may or may not have been starting to plan our birthday band camp today. We're very excited. But it's a boutique sewing quilting shop right here on Main Street in downtown Duluth, Georgia. We've had the incredible privilege of being voted the best arts and crafts shop in Gwinnett County for 2 years running now. We carry Paintbrush Studio fabrics, particularly their entire solids line, a selection of Moda and Figo fabrics with more on the way, Orfil thread, various notions, Burnett sewing machines, and we love hosting classes and events. You can actually see in this bottom right photo, these are our brand new classroom machines that arrived on Saturday. Our main classroom machine is now a B77. And we also have some sergers and some other machines on the floor as well. So it's super awesome. Oh, Jean, thank you so much. John bought the ruler foot for his Bernina for a retreat, but then came COVID. Jean, let's make that foot get some work done. Yeah, let's give that a job tonight. All right. So a bit of housekeeping. We're probably going to be here for another 30 to 40 minutes together. Turn off all distractions, right? If you've got some easy chain piecing that you could work on while we're here together, get that out and just enjoy this opportunity to hang out virtually with me and your fellow quilting rock stars. And please ask all the questions. There is not a question too basic or too introductory. There might be questions so advanced that I don't have a good answer off the top of my head, but please feel free to take a whack at it, right? But that's really the most important thing to me is anytime I'm teaching like this, I'm really wanting to come alongside you and provide an opportunity for you to ask some of those questions that sometimes we're scared to ask, right? Like when I first started free motion quilting, I was a little baby. Like I was like 24. I had 2 very young children. And I remember walking into a shop and I needed a hopping foot. But I was so new that like I didn't know that it was a big deal to have some machines and not others. And I had a hand-me-down Kenmore, which is not a glamorous sewing machine. She gets the job done though. Never knock the hand-me-down Kenmore. All right. We got to respect the power tool. And just had this experience of like, not only was I clearly not on a cool enough sewing machine, but it was not an environment where I could ask questions. And I had a lot of questions, right? As I had started researching things related to FMQ, I was encountering things like tension is so hard, but no information whatsoever about like how to fix it. Right. And so I've had to learn a lot of things by trial and error. And I've always sought in my education to provide an environment where you can ask the most basic level questions. So please, please do that. This is a very safe space. All right. Sometimes it is the hardest to find the most entry level education. All right. And I'm trying to fix that. Now, snag the workbook. This is the link that I already dropped in the chat. If you happen to be watching this on a device that is not your phone, you can pull out your phone, open the camera app and scan this QR code that's right here on the screen. If you are watching on your phone, you can snag this workbook. If for some reason you cannot click the link right now, right, you can later head to my website under digital education. You'll see the drop-down menu and there's the Quilting Rockstar library, okay? That's where this is hiding on my website. Worst case scenario, email me at hello@stringandstory.com and I can make sure that you get this, okay? So this is just a little gifty from me to you. This gets a little bit more pragmatic than some of what we're going to be talking about tonight, even down into showing you illustrations and some instructions for how to tackle your first couple of ruler quilting motifs, because that's the kind of thing that is hard to talk about in the nebulous form of a slide deck, right? Rather give you a workbook, you can study it, you can try it on your machine, right? But tonight we're really going to tackle some of these mindset things of what are these myths that we believe. Janet, I love it. You're tired of meandering. Let's spice things up. Oh, I'm so excited. Okay. So from here, the bottom line is you can and will be a ruler quilting rock star. It is my whole job to guide you to achieve that. If you are tired of meandering, let's give you some other options. All right. So 3 myths about quilting with rulers that you may believe, you may have encountered, you may have heard, you may have wondered if they're true. Let's start at the beginning. What is a quilting ruler, right? I've jumped right in as if that's the most obvious thing in the world. And spoiler, it's not this, right? By the way, we're in my home sewing space. You really can't tell that from what's in the background right now. So I'm surrounded by quilting things. So this is a cutting ruler. This is not what I'm talking about, right? This is really thin. This is really flexible. Please do not ever put that under your sewing machine. If the needle hits it, it's going to shatter. Injuries could occur, okay? A quilting ruler is a thick piece of acrylic. It is usually 1/4 of an inch thick, though some low shank varieties are thinner than that. And it helps you guide your quilt in a specific direction as you're quilting, guiding your quilt if you're on a domestic machine, guiding your long arm along the ruler if you're quilting on a frame, to make specific lines and shapes as you quilt, right? This is a really big deal for things like quilting a circle, right? For getting a straight line on a long arm, right? It's not the same, as I mentioned, as the ruler that you're going to use for cutting. And it's really important to keep in mind that often you're going to be asked, do you want a high shank or a low shank ruler? I have answered this email 17 times this week alone. It is only Monday, but it's an important question, right? And what do you do if you don't know if your machine is high or low shank, right? When in doubt, err on the side of the high shank machine. Is going to be a little bit thicker. It's a little bit safer. The whole point of the ruler being thick is to make sure it cannot slide up under your foot and the needle hit it, and again, that acrylic shatter, okay? So we quilt with a ruler foot. It's a round, circular metal foot. We bump that ruler up against it, and you think of it like you're creating a bowling lane, right? When you put the bumpers up on the bowling lane, the ball can only go one way, down the middle. It cannot go off to the side. It cannot get stuck in the gutter, right? We're seeking to essentially create a bowling lane with bumpers as you're quilting, so you go along a specific line, all right? Any question while we're here about kind of basic supplies for quilting with rulers? You can see here I've got my special foot on my machine. This is my Bernina 590, by the way. You absolutely can quilt with rulers on a domestic. More on that in just a second. I'm quilting here with a high shank ruler, and that I mentioned that specifically because one of the questions I've been getting a lot is Bernina is kind of like, our machines aren't high shank. They aren't low shank. I use a high shank ruler on my Bernina, and I'm very successful, okay? And then the third really important piece of equipment that I like to use when I'm quilting on my domestic is I do have my quilting gloves, and they just help me hang on to everything a little bit better, okay? All right, if you got questions about supplies, feet, rulers, drop those in the chat. I will answer them as we go, but let's start debunking some myths. Before we do that, using rulers is a really cool way to finish your quilts. This is why ruler quilting, right? Using rulers is a really cool way to finish your quilts because it allows you to add all types of geometric shapes to your quilts, right? So Janet says, I'm tired of meandering. These designs are way more exciting, right? They just add a different kind of pop. We've got plaid in the bottom left. We've got a grid in the top left. We have that square and a square design inside the star of the upper right. We have a vortex in the bottom right. There's a lot of possibilities that we can do with even just straight lines. And then we've got the clamshells. We have our continuous curves, our church windows, right? Lots of things then that you can add a curve in as well. This kind of precision and crisp line is next to impossible for most people in free motion quilting. But with the right tools, you can absolutely put these beautiful, very specific designs on your quilt without a pantograph and without a long arm if you're quilting on a domestic, okay? So myth number one, while we're here, quilting with rulers is only for long arm quilters. I've encountered this myth a lot over the last 6 months as I've begun teaching ruler quilting more often. And folks are like, but I'm not on a long arm, so like I can't do that, right? No, you absolutely can quilt with rulers on your domestic machine, all right? So this myth is false. Using a ruler is practically a necessity for long armers, at least for stitching in the ditch and stitching clean diagonal lines. Think about it. When we quilt on a long arm, we're quilting on an XY axis. This is like a giant etch-a-sketch for our quilt. The machine can go this way and it can go this way. And that means that if we want a diagonal line, we have to move smoothly along both axes. Y'all didn't know we were talking physics tonight, did you? So long arm quilters tend to jump into quilting with rulers a little bit earlier than folks who are quilting on their domestic, okay? But you absolutely can use rulers on both types of machines. The only roadblock you may potentially run into is just making sure you can find that ruler foot for your machine, all right? So quilters on all machines can use rulers for steady lines and cool geometric shapes. Now, for a long time, I didn't really understand the hype around using a ruler on a domestic machine because I was like, I can just put my walking foot on. Like, I want to make a circle. I'm going to take a dinner plate, trace around it with my hair marker, stitch on that puppy with my walking foot. And then I realized that if I free motion quilted with my ruler foot on, this was a happy accident that I stumbled into. Let me be clear. This was not some like lightning bolt of genius moment. This was, I got a new sewing machine that the default FMQ foot was a ruler foot. This was my Juki J150 that I was on for 4 years. And I all of a sudden was like, wait a second, if this is like my default FMQ foot anyway, I can just go back and forth between free motion quilting and stitching in the ditch and adding all these straight lines. This is kind of magic, right? And I started to notice that being able to switch back and forth seamlessly made it easier to travel from section to section, to add accents to different areas by stitching in the ditch around them very specifically, to add echoes, and to reduce my overall thread breaks. And that was such a game changer for me, right? Those of you who have taken my quilting plan challenge or any of my other education, you have heard me say more is more for me. When it comes to making a quilting plan, when it comes to deciding how to quilt my quilts, more is more. Right? I have a quilt on the frame right now that I have realized I thought I was going to custom quilt it. I am completely blocked about how to custom quilt it. It is just not speaking to me. We are having a wee domestic, me and this quilt, right? And I'm probably going to end up just doing an all over meander because I need to move it off the frame. It's a shop sample. It doesn't need to be custom quilted. But my more is more heart is suffering, right? Because I believe that more is more. And this made more is more easier, because it didn't mean that I had to do 75,000 thread breaks, right? I could move more seamlessly across, right? Dawn, if your ruler quilt won't FMQ, check your presser foot pressure. You may need to raise it up just a smidge so you have better movement of the quilt underneath, because it should be able to do both. Yeah, and if you keep running into issues with that, send me an email because let's troubleshoot it, because I want you to be able to do both with that foot, and I think you should be able to. Great question. Myth number 2. Quilting with rulers is an easy way to avoid learning free motion quilting. I had someone come into my shop this weekend who believed in this myth, this false myth, right? And I overheard them saying to a friend, oh, I'm just going to get a bunch of templates and trace around them to make all these shapes. And I wanted to go over and be like, that's going to be so hard. Like the stuff you're talking about, learn both skills. And for these things you're talking about, it's going to be easier with a ruler. And these things you're talking about, it's going to be easier with FMQ. Like learn both skills. And that they had bought into this myth of like, I'm not an artist. I'm just going to use a ruler. And they just want to buy a bunch of specialty rulers. And here's the thing. If you love quilting with rulers, if that is your jam and you love a good specialty ruler and you want to go ham on that, I'm going to support you all day long, right? Because what brings you joy units is top priority for me. This is our hobby. This is our fun thing. If you're excited about it and it's bringing you joy, I'm here for it, even if I have a different personal opinion, right? But generally speaking, I find that this is a myth, right? And that what ends up happening is that the pushing of your quilt underneath your machine is really not that different from free motion quilting than it is with a ruler. But with a ruler, you've got this whole other piece you have to keep track of, right? And it ends up being a lot of work. And like I said, some shapes are easier with that ruler and some shapes are harder, right? If you prefer to work with rulers, knowing the basics of free motion quilting is going to build up the muscles and the control that you need to be really successful. But also knowing some of those foundational FMQ motifs will prevent you from having to purchase every 1 trillion ruler that exists under the sun, and it will save you a lot of money. Okay, so when I teach about quilting with rulers, I really like to hone in on just a couple specific sets of rulers so that you're not having to buy 1,000,001 things and spend $1,000,001, right? We want to invest in a good selection of rulers that we're going to get a lot of bang for our buck and be able to do the maximum number of motifs possible without having to learn every specialty thing on the market, okay? Oh, Dawn, I'm glad that that's a helpful suggestion. Let's see. Joanne says my throat plate is on, and then why 6 inches? Try again, Joanne, because I don't think I understand the question, but I definitely want to help. All right, y'all, we are clicking along. Are you ready? Myth number 3. Quilting with rulers, this is the opposite end of the spectrum, right? Quilting with rulers is only for super duper experienced quilters. This is for the ribbon winners and the Paducah entrants, right? False. Stitch in the ditch is a key skill for quilting on both the domestic and the long arm. It is important for emphasizing specific areas of your quilts, for moving from section to section on the quilt without having to break thread. And or Stitch in the Ditch can be an entire quilting plan depending on the scale of the quilt, right? So no matter what you're doing, being able to use a ruler for these foundational skills like Stitch in the Ditch is super important. And I recommend mastering it with a ruler as soon as possible. Do this sooner rather than later. And while you're at it, you might as well tackle a few other things. All right. Now, you certainly can use rulers to create much more complex motifs like the incredible feathers of Beth Ann Damish. I don't know if y'all have ever seen her like French curve feather template that she's got special templates for the spines of these feathers. They're stunning, right? And that absolutely is an advanced skill. But every person who is seeking to finish their own quilts, I think will benefit from basic ruler work skills, even if you just start with Stitch in the Ditch, all right? So just like with free motion quilting, I recommend you start sooner rather than later, right? The sooner you start, the less time that a voice in your mind has to say mean things. We call that our inner mean grump, your IMG. And the sooner we can get in action, the sooner that voice is going to quiet down, right? And then you're going to have more freedom and more confidence to layer more skills together, okay? Joanne says that she has a 6-inch throat space. I have great news for you. I taught my signature Free Motion Quilting Academy on a singer that I bought online with a 5.5-inch throat space for years. I have done ruler work on small throat spaces. The biggest thing is that if you've got a smaller throat space, you're going to really put forth an effort to never put that ruler in between your foot and the side of the harp, okay, the side of that throat space. I don't really recommend doing that anyway because it just cramps things up, right? But you'd be amazed. I've done comfortably, well, maybe not comfortably. I have done with an appropriate amount of elbow grease up to double-sized bed quilts with a 6-inch throat. So Joanne, maybe we need to debunk that myth too of throat space being a limited factor. You can at the very least get started. I always believe that the machine you already have is the perfect one to get started on. And if you get excited and you're wanting a bigger throat and you're wanting to upgrade your machine, I would love to have that conversation. Please see the Burnett's that I mentioned previously, but jump in and don't let that limit you because you've got this entire world of creativity just waiting for you, Rockstar, just waiting for you. All right. So as I've already hinted at here, one of my very favorite quotes from Angelia Trinidad is action cures fear. All right. And so today y'all have already taken a really important action by showing up to this masterclass. And what that says to me is that you've each proverbially raised your hand and said, I'm really curious about this quilting with rulers things, but I think I might have some false beliefs about my own capabilities and about whether or not this applies to me. I'm going to show up at this thing and see if I can debunk some of these. And I hope that even in just a few minutes, we've been able to take perhaps 3 key things that might have been holding you back from this desire of doing work with rulers and toss them to the side and cleared this pathway so that hopefully you feel more excited and more like it is possible to learn to quilt with rulers than you did 15, 20, 25 minutes ago, right? So how can you continue this process of becoming a confident ruler quilting rock star? I told you at the very beginning that you were going to be one. How are we going to make that happen, right? And I have 2 key resources for you. The first is that workbook that I mentioned at the top of our time together. I'm going to go ahead and drop the link again in the chat. This is just a free gift. Because you are here, I want to make sure that you have a next step available to you. Even if, because I already spoiled this, right? Even if Ruler Quilting Academy, which I'm going to talk about in just a second, isn't the right choice. I do not want you to leave here empty-handed. I want you to leave here with an option. Okay. So this Confident Ruler Quilting Workbook is absolutely going to take you another step closer on that journey of becoming a ruler quilting rock star. If you already know that this is something that you want to prioritize, you already know that you've been looking for a way to add this toolbox to your repertoire, then I would absolutely love to see you inside of Ruler Quilting Academy. Ruler Quilting Academy is my newest signature course. We've had an incredibly successful first cohort, and I am confident in saying that this is now a proven method. That inside of Ruler Quilting Academy, we're going to build on the lessons from tonight's masterclass in 8 weeks of step-by-step video lessons designed to help you become confident quilting with rulers. We're going to start at the very beginning. How the heck do I navigate this ruler under my throat space, especially if it's on the smaller side, right? How do I stitch in the ditch? How do I do echo quilting? How do I begin to do ruler guided switchbacks and use my ruler to measure for things like grids, all the way up to doing really complex designs, things like vortexes, rail fences, etc., where you're really creating a design that didn't exist there before. Okay. So here's a few testimonials from cohort number 1. Our founding cohort was exceptionally awesome. And they said, I love your videos. You explain things clearly. You're inspiring. And I love that you sometimes have a bobble, but you keep going. That means that I can too. Your Q&A sessions are fun and your enthusiasm is contagious. Each of these testimonials that you're going to hear from here tonight are from Rockstars who actually graduated from Ruler Quilting Academy over the weekend. If you're here on YouTube with me and you haven't had a chance to watch that graduation video, I highly recommend it. It's really cool to see all the work that those students created. Mary says, I really enjoyed Ruler Quilting Academy and I felt like I learned a lot. I took your introduction to rulers in 2021 and RQA took my skills to a new level. I loved what Mary said here because she really indicated that this class takes things to an elevated place, but it really highlights that we can start right at the very beginning and work on through together as well. All right. So a brief overview. I did not update this, y'all. I am so sorry. And so I'm going to pull these slides down because I don't want this to be confusing because I did not update the pricing on that. We are past our early bird. Ruler Quilting Academy consists of 6 video lessons where I'm going to start with what do you need to successfully ruler quilt, and I'm going to build our motifs over the course of the coming modules so that we start at that most basic place and we end up at our most complex place. In addition to that, we have live Q&As together every other week because I think one of the secret sauce items of being able to learn successfully online is having access to an instructor, because I never want you to feel stuck. I think that's another myth that we sometimes buy into when it comes to learning online, is this myth of I'm going to buy this course and then I'm just going to be out on the high seas by myself. And that is absolutely not the case with any of the string and story classes. It's very important to me to make sure that you have a way to work with me and ask your questions and get them answered. So we have our Facebook group where you can get answers from me and from other students on a day-to-day basis. And then every other week, we do live Q&A sessions where you can ask those questions ahead of time and then get your questions answered during the live. And we take up questions ahead of time because I know that with time zones, when I'm live may not necessarily be the time for you. And it's really important for me to make sure that these classes are accessible regardless of your time zone or your geography. All right. You have a full color workbook that is included with this course, and that includes very valuable doodle sheets of all the motifs that we do, quick guides, quick tips and tricks, and all the instructions for how to graduate at the end of class. Graduation is totally optional, but it's really fun. And then we're actually adding a bonus unit this time around as well for those of you who are long arming on a frame. So that was one of the key pieces of feedback that I received from cohort 1, is that while the education from me being on my Bernina, I filmed this whole course on my Bernina 590. For me being on a domestic machine, while it did translate up to the long arm, the first module or 2 was really bumpy for my long arm students. So we're actually going to put a unit in specifically for those of you who are quilting on the frame to kind of help overcome some of those translation issues so that you can be off to the races and feeling confident about working on your machine. Okay. Now, all of this is, of course, is incredibly valuable, especially since you have lifetime access to all of the above. So even though we have an 8-week schedule, you're free to work through at the pace that works for you. I know that life happens, right? In 2020 alone, I had courses that my students navigated broken ankles, appendicitis, a loss in my family. Like, life happens to all of us. And I don't want y'all to make an investment and then miss out on that opportunity because a course expired. This course is not going to expire. It's going to be there waiting for you. Okay. It is all pre-recorded. Those live Q&As, I do stream them live, but then that recording is up in both our Facebook group and inside of our class portal. We have everything closed captioned for y'all. And while right now it is not professionally filmed yet, yours truly filmed it on this very iPhone. It's very glamorous. They're very functional, effective videos right now. They're going to be much nicer videos later this year when we do professionally record this class, and you will get that upgrade totally for free when we get to that point. Okay. So all of this is available for one tuition payment of $247 or three tuition payments of $78. Enrollment is open until April 1st. And we will be kicking off with our new student orientation next week and then diving straight into these lessons. So this whole course is designed to be a perfect stepping stone that you've expressed this curiosity. We've debunked some of these myths. You have a resource that you can go ahead and start reviewing and start playing around with. And then we can dive right into working on some quilts together and showing you the amazing success that you can have as a ruler quilting rock star. So if you are excited or you are curious and you want to read all the things, I am dropping that link in the chat now. I would love to see you inside of Ruler Quilting Academy. And as we begin to wind down our time together, if you have additional questions about the myths we debunked today, about the supplies you need to successfully ruler quilt, or about Ruler Quilting Academy, please drop them in the chat. I would love to answer them for you. And now I have talked a million miles a minute, so I am going to drink some water. I get going, y'all, and I practically forget to breathe because I get so excited. Thank you all so much for being here with me this evening. As a review, Donna says, are you in the store on Friday? I am in the store this Friday. I'm not in the store next Friday, but I'm in the store this Friday, and I would love to see you. Please come by. You can come make heart eyes at our new classroom machines with me. I'm very excited about them. I'm eager to show them off. I love it. So as a review, ruler quilting is not just for long armers. It is not just for super advanced quilters. It is for anyone who is seeking to finish their own quilts and wants to add that more geometric and controlled stitch in the ditch element, etc. John, do send me an email Thursday night and confirm that I have the panels that you want for your kit. We are having a shipping delay with Paintbrush. I'm really tired of saying that sentence. I've said that sentence a lot lately. We are continuing to have shipping delays. So send me an email Thursday night or give me a call first thing Friday morning. Shop opens at 10. So give me a call right at 10 and confirm with me that we have the panels that you want, because we're doing our best. Yeah. But I would love for you to come get it in person, even if it has to wait until the following week. Pineapple Soul says, thank you for the quilting workbook. And what is for me an intro to ruler quilting. I'm so excited that you were here. Y'all, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate y'all's engagement and taking time to ask questions and introduce yourselves. And I would love to see each and every one of you inside of Ruler Quilting Academy. Good night, y'all.